Hello there and welcome to actually my first video of 2024, so happy new year. And going to be actually jumping in with, granted a little bit late, of what things people might have got in their stockings for Christmas. So I've got two tanks here. First of all, they're both Airfix 1/72 scale, the Sherman Firefly, and that is A68221, and also the Tiger 1, but also Airfix 172 A68222. I'm going to have a go at building these, and the reason I'm doing these is because these are ones that people pick up before Christmas, and I think from Lidl or Aldi, one of those ones where it's about £5, comes with everything that's in there. So you've got a brush, a couple of paints, little thing of glue, and yeah, just simple sort of stocking fillers. The idea by Airfix is that you get people these, they don't need to have any other equipment, literally build it from the box, and yeah, build everything that they need, and hopefully gets them into the hobby. Of course, the problem is that the paints and things in these aren't of a great quality, so the issue can be people end up fighting it more and not actually kind of coming up with anything that's very good. So it's just something that gets played with one rainy Sunday afternoon, built in a matter of hours, if that, and popped on the side and then forgotten about, thrown away. But it's a good little stocking filler. Now I'm going to have a crack at both of these, but first of all, and I do want to try to do it out of the box as well. I've done one similar before, actually, when they first come out. So actually, let's just get rid of the Sherman for now. Just concentrate on the Tiger. And the reason I'm doing this one is because when this first came out, it actually had two versions of the track system in there, where there's one where you actually do the road wheels all individually, build it up, and the track is made of various smaller lengths. You can see somewhere, yeah, if you're looking there, if I put my hand behind, you can see there's a bit of a join where things didn't quite fix. So it sort of wrapped around, and actually I did attempt to paint this with the airbrush. Well, actually the base coats, what yellow went on with the airbrush, and I ended up having to just paint the actual camo, three-tone camo, with the paintbrush, but not a paintbrush that probably come in with the kit. But actually overall, probably could have done with a bit more weathering underneath and around there. I can spot a few little bits, but overall quite a nice kit. I know there was a few little fit issues literally on the very first part, and yeah, but overall, some of the details that look, separate details, things that could have been moulded on. Yeah, I think the shovel on the front was moulded on, but tow ropes separate, and yeah, took a wash quite nicely. And actually, for a 1/72 scale kit, yeah, I was quite pleased, and it's also quite new moulding. So I think I built this probably about 2-3 years back now, and you can see the link. It's actually quite a popular video. But so I thought I'd do this version, and I believe with this version, there's not the not going to be the version to make the more complicated tracks and wheels. I think, if I recall, it's just sort of a sandwich it together, so it's a bit of a less complicated, quicker version. And with a camo, it's not got the three-tone camouflage scheme on there, it's just a basic sort of yellow scheme. So yeah, I'm going to try to do this version completely out the box. What I might use is a few little bits and pieces that actually a non-modeler might have laying around the house, and then maybe have a go at this one and see if I can do similar. The idea is I don't want to be putting primer down, not going to be using airbrush. So, I mean, granted I've got a modelling knife here, but I don't know whether I will use that during the build. Let's open up and see what we've actually got here. So, paintbrush, instructions, bag of bits, and yeah, that's everything that's in there. So, let's see what we've got. So, first of all, brush, standard brush there, and actually it does look actually quite fine. So it's a number 2 size, whatever that means, but just standard brush and a little thing to pop over it. So again, won't be using any sort of thinners or cleaners, those sort of things on it. I'll just be using, to be honest, bottle of water, that sort of thing for the paints. Let's have a look at the paints. So this is the thing that I'm going to be using. Is I'm umming and ahhing do I use this, or do we go for the old Tamiya extra thin, which is what I would have used on here? And I'm going to give it a crack with this, not the Tamiya extra thin, but if it turns out that this is just too gloopy and I start getting flashbacks of my childhood and things going wrong, then we might use the Tamiya thin on the Sherman, just to see how we go. But the idea is use what's in here, and then some little pots. So that's the 53, so if I recall that's like an iron. We've got a 94, which is a light brown colour, and a 33, these are the Humbrol codes, that's a black, and those are going to be the acrylic paints. And the issue is going to be with these is that they're going to be absolutely dry and horrible, and people try to put these on in one coat, so I'm going to try to do multiple coats. Decals, only a little decal sheet. Now if I recall, it's a small beginner set there, but if I recall from these, at least this, the larger version, sorry, that version, the decals actually went down really nicely. They were done by Cartograph, and I just remember like that 007 we've got there, there's a little bump and stuff, it went down. Not many decals at all, but I do recall they just seem to go down really nicely. One of the weird things I remember from that. But we've got a few of the crosses and numbers, so not too much on the decal side of things. We'll look at the instructions next. So, standard Airfix way of doing this. So A4 folded up into sort of DL envelope size. Construction kits, only a little bit of information on there, and lots of warning, not suitable for children. I guess being a people might get this thinking it's actually a toy, so they're probably making a little bit more effort on there, but it does give you a few little specs about the Tiger one. And see if so we should have 3 sprues there, basic whole of it. Then we've got the turret, and then the tracks, so we can see that they're the 2-part, and this goes together. Now I remember actually it was one of these parts that actually had issues, and I did need to thin something a little bit just to get this to come in square. But they really are taking you through, so you can see what sprue to use, what parts on the sprue to use, and even where to put the glue. Okay, so we can see that then now we're using those parts, and actually as they're getting used, you can see these parts are coming off. So you'd use sprue A, and you're removing it, building up basically how it was going to go, and get that clicking. They're really showing you how you'd lever that in. So we're using up all of sprue A first, get the sides on, side skirts on, then the exhausts. So those look, no, I think they're actually going to be the same as well. So it is literally, I'm just double checking it is the same tooling, where get the exhaust that goes over and then covers. I didn't know whether they might have simplified some of this, and it looks like the actually no, that does look slightly, no, there we go, just rotate that. It is the same deck on it as well. It's got the same parts, the little shovels, the same tools moulded on. There we go, so we've got little bolt cutters, that sort of thing, they're all there. So just confirm it is exactly the same tooling on there. Good to see. Turret comes together, and that's all going to look the same. Getting flashbacks there. I mean, I did remember with this one having a paranoid bit, because there was a hole in the top there, and it wasn't until I was painting it that I suddenly thought I'd lost a part, and was hunting around for something that didn't actually exist. It isn't meant to be there. But coming through, with the barrel on the end, I did notice with this one there is, it has over time at the very top, it's just started to separate a little bit there. Don't know if you can quite see that. And you can tell that that's actually happened since it was being painted, which is a little bit annoying, but maybe I'll try and have a touch up of that at some point. But you can see, and the main thing is tracks going on. They're literally, each side is a two-piece affair. They actually sandwich together. This one did come with the option of those, or you could build up separately, and I went to build up separately because it gave a more refined, detailed look, but it will be interesting just to compare. And of course, with the painting, it's going to be, it was a lot easier to paint the road wheels and everything, and you can see there's no way those, like that second layer, I couldn't have done that camouflage on there if that had all been the all-in-one version of it. So that two-tone, so I literally done each wheel individually, painted it up, and then dropped it in, wrapped the track around, which was quite interesting. But yeah, that's all done, so that's simple enough. Let's come to the actual bag. So we know already we've got 3 sprues, A, B, C, no clear parts or anything like that. So the plastic is done in a colour which is similar to the that sandy yellowy light brown colour. We don't really need to look too much at this because obviously no, it's actually going to be exactly the same parts. I can't remember the sprue layout, but I would imagine it is going to be the same sprues because it's come in a box similar sort of size. So that's going to be the first one that we use. Then the turret is all on that part, and yeah, you can see it definitely there's a definite chunkiness to them, but good quality. Doesn't seem so soft actually as the regular sort of plastic. And yeah, so I mean, we know it's sort of recessed. It is a shame that some of these details are moulded on. 1 to 72nd scale, we could have got away with actually just putting them on, but again, if they had known that they were going to be doing this as a as a simple kit, then yeah, that obviously makes sense. So he must have known that it was going to be a one of these all-in-one sets once they'd actually got the first batch done. But yeah, good sort of detail. Got a few little rivets around the hatches, a few little rivets around the gun. So overall, I mean, the thing is just going to be, and yeah, you've got little nuts, bolts, rivets on the track. The only thing is going to be is you're going to have a line down the centre of the track where the two parts come together. And if I recall, yeah, the actual this again, you're probably not going to be able to see, but there's a lot more finer tread on there. Whereas, yeah, so each one of these little cross members going across has got little, you can actually see little tread on there, whereas these, they're just going across. No sort of actually, best way might be to show you on the box here. You can see you've got the V shapes. That's not on the moulded bit, it's just straight. And that was one of the reasons why I decided to go for that. Although the actual wheels themselves do actually have quite nice detail on there. And again, it should take a wash. Whether I'm going to be doing a wash, I'm not too sure how I'm going to go about doing the wash, because obviously there's no wash in this kit. So yeah, quite simple. So I think the idea is just going to be get this built. Going to be doing it in effectively 3 stages, I think. Which is how I've done it with this one. Do this part, do the main chassis of it, do the turret with the gun. Those 2 bits will be painted separately, and of course, and then combined. I mean, that literally just, yeah, I could probably pull that off. Could I? No, I won't. I think it actually just clips in place if I recall. I don't want to break it by pulling it off. But of course, that doesn't go on with glue. So the 2 parts can be painted separately, and then of course each of those, and it's going to be easier to paint those whilst they're off. Yeah, just going to have to work out how we're going to get that done. Pop those on, and then clip the turret into the main hole, pop those on the side. Whether I might try to use like the black or something to see if I can actually create a weathering wash, like a real watered down one with the black 33. I don't know, we'll have to see how we get on. But I think for now it's just going to be getting these bits stuck together, and wish me luck. So I'm going to try to use this for the first time in God knows how many years. Ooh, right, let's get on. Right, so now we've done a bit of an unboxing and a review. Now we're going to build it. So it's really going to be 3 phases. I'm going to do each sprue at a time. So sprue A, then sprue B for the turret, and then sprue C, which is going to be those bits. So we'll be build each of them up as their own sub-assemblies, prime, paint, and any weathering that we can do as well, all using what's from the box. So initially I was going to use my sprue cutters. I was about to start clipping out, and also got a scalpel, craft knife, and also a bunch of sanding sticks, different varieties which are good for different grits getting in. Trying to do things without, for example, if I was to get this for Christmas, or if you were to get this for Christmas, you might have got one of these and you haven't got those bits. So I'm really going to go back to basics. So to actually remove from the sprues, I'm just going to use a pair of scissors. Ideally, these aren't going to be as good as sprue cutters getting in, but that should be fine. And then for sanding, I thought actually use one of these nail files. I remember as a kid always used to borrow some emery boards. So let's see how this goes. So what we'll do is, I mean, to be honest, in theory, we'll take off each part. It's a pretty simple construction. I'm just going to remove everything from the sprues for now and clean them all up. So hopefully, is this going to... That does work. Okay, we've got quite a big sprue tab going on there. I'm starting to regret this decision, because the sprue gates are quite big, but better to do this than the old, wobble it about and snap it off is what I used to do as a kid. So you can see we've got some quite big sprue gates to remove there. I'm immediately regretting this decision. Part of me thinks that what I could do is I could do a couple like this just for demonstration, and then use the sprue cutters to do it properly. Actually, what we could do is use the knife, the craft knife, because people would actually have a craft knife. Yeah, let's give this a go. Okay, so update. I've just had a look to see whether I could find a craft knife. I've got one somewhere. One of the little ones where you slide it out and the blade comes out. A little small mini sort of standing knife, and I cannot find it for now. I'm not going to use the sprue cutters, but what I will do, just because these tabs are ridiculously large, and I think just too large really. So what we'll do is, I could use these, but I'm just going to use, just to make life a bit easier, because I'm going to make life too hard for myself using scissors. I'm going to use this first of all just to remove the tabs and what I've already taken off, and then continue. I mean, we've still got some big old tabs there, but I'm just taking off a bit of the excess off of it, because I think most people would have maybe not a scalpel or a one of these sort of things, but at least a small sort of craft knife somewhere they would have access to. Those sort of like the mini ones, just because trying to rub down is just going to be silly. Now we can obviously get in a bit tighter. Because I'm getting in tighter, getting a lot less tab on there. Still got a bit that's going to need to be cleaned up. Now I've got to say, these sprue gates, you can probably hear as I'm cutting through, they really are quite thick, and I don't know if, as a kid you used to give these a wobble, got them off there, but that's got this part alone has got 7 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 sprue gate attachment points on there, and that would have been, you couldn't wobble that one off, but it does keep them square and keep them straight. And we'll need to remove that little one there. That, for those that don't know, is just something that for when it gets pushed out the mould, so it doesn't bend up there from some of these larger pieces. So you want to make sure you remove that. It's easier to do when it's off. That one wasn't actually connected, which is odd. Missing that one there. There. So that is everything off of sprue A. That's all these parts off, and now normally I'd now come in with a variety of sanding sticks at different grades to get into the different places. So we're going to give it a go using a nail file. And we're just going to go along each of these. And there's a bit big, I'm just going to use the blade to trim it down a bit. But essentially, I mean, if you've built models before, you know this. If you haven't, you might not realise that actually the tolerances are pretty fine, and by that I mean you need to make sure, because some of these bits butt against each other, and sometimes having these little bits sticking out just will not get a perfectly smooth join. But yeah. Okay, so that's just cleaned that up. So that's just taken off those little bits. So just to explain, if I hadn't, let's take one of, which bits, actually let's just use the instructions just to do one side. So here's the bit that I've just cleaned, here's the bit that isn't, and I haven't cleaned this part at all. So this part would go on here, and I don't know if you can see, there's a little, actually you can just see through, just whereabouts, oh I've got something on my fingernail there, but where these little tabs are, when that goes on, you might be able to just see through the gap. You can just see the when I hold it over the white paper, you can see the white through it, and going over the green you can just see it, you can see the light through it. That is because that is literally just poking out 0.5 millimetre. This one hasn't been done, so that just demonstrates why. So actually that was the one I'd cleaned. We'll try it again on this side. So again, we've got these two little tabs. I'm trying to remove them as best as I can, but you can see definitely a gap, and you can see that as I go from the white over to the green. Yeah, you can see that quite clearly there. There's that line there, and you can even see the two little tabs. So taking here, giving it a rub off. I'm just doing the one side for now. Actually, this doesn't work. Isn't too bad. So now, you've got to make sure that when you're doing this, now of course you've got to bear in mind that not only you're rubbing off the tab, you could potentially be taking a layer off where you don't want it to go. I think this was the part. Now I put that on there. Now we've got rid of that tab, and now you can see no gap, and that's literally just those two little tabs. I was saying that there's a little bit of a little minute sort of gap right at the top of that end, just about there. So yeah, that's why, illustrates why we want to clean these bits up. front there. So that bit's all nice and done. You can, and if you rub your finger over it, you can feel that it's a lot smoother. I think that was the one that I've already done. Of course, I can do that just by rubbing over. Let's get the rest of these done. If needs be, I can always use the scalpel. And actually with this, I'm using the file edges side, which is the coarser side, but I can switch to remove ridges, which is a finer grit, and if I really wanted to, I guess at a later date, there's the smooth, which is an even finer, so if there was any other smaller bits I just wanted to get rid of a seam line, I could use those, and actually might even be able to use the shine one, which gives the final polish on a fingernail, of course. Might even be able to, could use that for a canopy. We might find that one out. So again, I'm just going to neaten it up a little bit. If once you've made a kit or two, and I'm talking to anyone who might be a beginner who's got one of these for Christmas and hasn't built it yet, got round to it, if you do kind of get into it and your mum or your girlfriend or someone doesn't want you using their nail files, I know my mum was never keen on me using the emery boards, but if you do get into it, then you can buy a craft knife. Oh, you can get some sets, for example, on Amazon, which have got more of the bits in. So I'm using the slightly finer one because I just want to get rid of one on the edge there. So yeah, you can buy a craft knife or pop down to Hobbycraft, hobby shop, those sort of things. You don't necessarily need to have all the kits straight away, and getting some of the proper, how should we say, the proper ones designed for modelling files and things, they can be a bit expensive, especially when you're starting off. When you're kind of into it and you're buying kits which cost quite a bit more, and it's a bit more of an investment, and you know it's something you're doing, you might want to splash out, treat yourself, future birthday, Christmas presents, that sort of thing. One thing I would recommend against though is for the files is not getting I've got some over there, but the metal files, I think they still use them as craft and hobby, but they can be a bit too abrasive. I think you can be taking too much plastic off. Here we're looking just to remove fractions of a millimetre in places. I think I might have just bent that a little bit, but hopefully that will straighten it out when I put it on there. I just noticed there's a bit of a curve and I don't think that was meant to be like that. So I just recommend against getting the metal sort of files. They can be useful for later on with things. If you get old kits, you need to make modifications. Yeah, you might want to be removing a bit more plastic, is probably the best way to put it. Some kits, older kits, have got fit issues. Sometimes you want to modify, you might need to remove detail. For example, if you're going to be using a photo etch, and you're getting aftermarket bits where you actually got to remove the moulded in detail to put on other detail. For example, purely as an example, we see we've got some of the moulded on. I don't know if you can see it very well there, but we've got like some bolt cutters, spades and things. What you could do is to file those off and have separate things that you put on afterwards, just to give it a bit more realistic detail instead of it being moulded on. Obviously not doing, I don't even know if kits are available for this kit, but you know, that's the sort of thing when you might want something a bit more aggressive. But for now, you just want to keep it simple. Now remember when I didn't have, before I was removing the tabs, I demonstrated about how you have the gap. The problem is if you're too aggressive with it and you do take off too much plastic, you can then go too much the other way where you actually do then genuinely have a gap because you've put in, you know, you've taken off too much. So where are we now? We have now got all of the bits that was from sprue A. We've now got all of those bits taken off the sprues and cleaned up. So we'll now pop these together, work our way through here, and it actually shows you which, you know, which parts to use and where to place the glue. It's always worth, before putting glue on there, as I did just now, test fitting these parts. Test fitting literally means holding them up and just making sure that they come together. Now I remember when I built this kit before, there was, I think it could have even been the side that I'm holding now, the gap there's a little channel that fits in that little diagonal part, and I remember that channel wasn't quite wide enough to accept that, which meant that it kind of just sort of bowed out, and I had to somehow, I'm not too sure how now, but I just had to either make that wider or make that thinner, so that would go in. Okay, we won't do that. So the glue will pop on, so this goes there, and this part butts up against, so I'm just giving an idea of how this goes, so that goes across there, and just pop a little, there's a little bit that it butts up against there and that little groove there. So the glue seems to apply where the blue is. It's easy to put too much of this on, so okay. What I'm going to do is, just because this can blurge out, I need to put a thin line of it across there and along the bottom bit there. Okay, so basically whereabouts that's going to connect on, actually from the top there and across just to that back bit there. I'm going to start, this is going to be inside where no one's going to see it, so I'm just going to put a blob of that on there, and then okay. I don't want to squeeze if I can help it, only a light. And I'm putting a thin little line of it on there, so that I can try to get rid of some of that excess. It blurges out. So I've got a thin little line of it on there. Then we take this, push that there. And you can see we've already got glue. I don't know if you can. Oh, hang on, got glue starting to come out. Let's just hold that in place. Like so, and now that's just it, that's dripping, and that the good thing is we haven't got it coming out there, because I try to keep that glue on the inside. We haven't got it splurging out there. Okay, so we're going to do the same on the other side, just whilst that dries. So again, get a bead of it along there and a little bit in that channel. Where it comes there. So just, and so remember I'm working sort of, and I need to push, I'm just bringing it in to the not so visible part. and then using that just to try to, you don't need much of it at all. That's just on there. It does take a moment or two just to go tacky enough for that to come in. And again, squeeze at the front. I have got a little bit starting to splurge out a little bit there. We have got a bit of a gap there as well. Okay, now what we can do is, if I'm worried that we have got enough in there, but if I was worried that there was going to be a bit of a gap there, what I could do is from the inside, just sort of try to put a very thin bead on the inside there, and that will help sort of just fill it. That wasn't squeezing it, I was actually using that to just sort of rub it along. Hopefully that might have caught the light. Now we want that to be, if we're going to be splurging out glue and putting excess glue on, we want it to be on the inside and not on the outside. There, and then we just push that together. There we go. So that's our first two parts done. Next parts, let's put these on sooner rather than later, and the reason I say that is because that is all going to help keep this square. So flip this around here. Now this goes on the back. We've got all the holes in there, that's where the various exhaust pipes and things are going to go. So again, we just check how that's going to fit on. That fits on quite nicely. We have actually got a little bit of a gap going on there. No, that's fine. So it just gives us an idea of whereabouts we're going to be gluing as well. So again, run the bit of glue. You've got those edges where it's going to be butting up against. And then it comes across the top as well. And that goes on like so. Yeah, we do seem to have a little bit of a gap in each of those. If it's on both sides there, maybe that means that comes down a little bit. Yeah. We have a little bit of glue splurging out. Probably shouldn't do it with my finger, but that's fine because we're using the things that we've got. So that's on that side, and then there was the bit at the front. Which part was that? That's the bit that I think I've actually bent when I was getting carried away. And this, actually what's interesting there, you've got these two little slots. So that goes in those slots, which will actually create some gaps there. So it's just bearing in mind, what I could have done is if I hadn't test fitted this, I could have been sticking a load of glue over there, and that is obviously clearly going to have some gaps in that place there. So we know where that's going to go. And again, that covers, so these bits, these edges are visible, so we want to put the glue in, not on those edges, but within those edges. Don't know if that makes sense. So again, I'm making sure I've just had a load of it splurge out, but that's fine, because the splurging is on the inside, not the outside. So you might be able to catch that in the light. See, there's a load of it on there, but that is in, not there. Those bits, top bits, are going to be dry, so we can just simply put that on. Okay, so there's a whole load of glue that would have been, if you had a look in there, which I can't even see from there, then there'd be right in there, there'd be a whole mess of it. But from what we're looking at, yeah, it looks fine. It looks nice and clean and tidy because all the glue splurging in there. So that takes us up to there. Oh, interesting. Okay, I mentioned about the gaps at the back. Interesting thing is here, it actually says there is meant to be a gap. There's a tick, so I just need to move that up there. I was pushing that. There we go. We're allowed to have a bit of a gap there, which is fine. Let me just pop, just to clear that glue. There I was thinking I had to fill a gap. Good for Airfix to actually point that out. Just to let you know, don't worry about trying to fill a gap, that is meant to be there. Now, I should have paid attention to the instructions, and I'm just using the blade just to clear that gap out of the glue. There we go. Cool. Phew, lucky I noticed those bits. Final part to go on this page, still got the skirts to go on, and it looks like this clips in pretty much and then goes over, and then we actually sort of push that, so that goes in there, so that's where those gaps are for there, and then you can see it goes in, there's a little ridge there, so we just pop, we just going to have a bead there, just work out again where that's going to go, so we can pop the glue on the inside of that bit. So what I'm doing is I'm checking the contact points, or basically I'm checking that it fits, but I'm also checking the contact points. There we go. I've put on probably too much glue, but that is also going to be on the, again, on the inside. Oh, and before I forget, run it along the top of this ridge. Well, it's far too much. This is the problem with this stuff, is you have a little bit and it comes out, you haven't got so much control over it. So there, I was just using the nozzle, not to actually squeeze it out, but just to spread out the blob that come out. But again, fortunately, I've been aiming it inside. Pop that in, and then that slides in onto that ridge there, and we're good. I do have a little bit of glue just splurging out there. Get rid of that. There we go. And then we should be flicking it over. Yeah, actually, just to say, it does actually say practice assembling each part whilst looking at the drawings in each step before gluing parts together. So it really is the beginner's version of this. We can see that now each of these are going to go on, and just to pop what it says on here, pop the glue, well, we'll just work out that one goes there. What would be good is trying to get these bits on now, is it will make sure that then everything is all going to be square and together. If anything is wobbly, by putting all the sides on. So we want to, actually what we'll do is here we've got the ridges, that goes in there. So we've got the ridge along here, the ridge on the rear. So really I'm not putting pressure on the tube all the time. I put a squeeze a bit out, and then I use, basically I'm pretty much brushing it down. Now that is inside, and then there we go. Now I can be a bit more liberal because this is inside for this bottom bit there, so it's not going to be seen, so I can kind of smear it about there. I want to get a thin, even layer. Thin probably being the operative word, because that makes it tacky. That's far too much. Smear that around. It makes it tacky without having enough, so that then when you push it, you want it to stick but not be splurging out. So get that in there. There we go. Now glue is glue and not filler, and by that I mean you shouldn't really be using glue to fill gaps. It kind of does, it does make the glue go a bit, the plastic go a bit tacky, and I guess you can do it a bit, but especially with a kit like this, this is designed to fit together with millimetre accuracy, or sub a millimetre, so you shouldn't be needing to kind of have much in the way of gaps, as long as you're removing your sprue gates and you're test fitting everything fits fine, which we will do on this side again just to make sure. I remember when I built this one, it was, you know, one of those bits which I pointed out earlier did have the issues with, and that's, you know, I've discovered that from test fitting. If I just blindly been gluing, that's when I could have found some issues. Right, so I just put a big blob of glue just where there was a bit of a gap, actually, so it smeared it in, but then using that as my palette, I guess, to then smear to the edge. There we go. So hopefully got a thin layer of it. It's still a lot more than I would like, but it's really hard having control with just that. So, I mean, there is Revel's version of this, which is same sort of thing, slightly thinner, and it's got a little needle applicator which always gets blocked up, but then you can use that to try to, you know, put the glue down, which is a lot better. And my personal choice would be Tamiya Extra Thin, because what happens with that is you literally hold the parts together, you pretty much brush that on the outside, and it literally melts the plastic, welding it together. But you don't put it on the piece and then pushes the pieces together. You would hold the pieces together and then literally run it down the seam, and it kind of gets pulled in. Clever stuff. But that is our basic, basic tank there. Oh, we've got a few blobs coming out here and there. So what I'll do, I'm just going to use my fingers just to smear it off. And what we'll do, when it's dry, not now, and when it's dried and cured, I can then just file that down. If I try to do it now, it's just going to start balling up. Make sure it's properly dry before you start doing that. And there we go. So that is our basics there. Oh, got a few extras. Actually, I'd said that B was all the turret. It looks like we do have a few bits. One thing that did notice is when I was just looking at it just now, we've got some little hooks on the front of this version, which I don't think, no, we might have. Don't know, we'll see. There's some little, sort of like the little towing. They've got the eyes for it there, but I don't know whether they're on here, so we might have to see if we can come up with something just to do those little towing hooks. One's on the back as well. Yeah, one's on the back. Yeah, we've got the little eyelets for them for where they go in. So that does make me think these aren't the same sprues, because that would include those. Anyway, let's put these final bits of detail on here. Again, I'm not going to use the scissors. Pop the lid on there whilst that dries. So what we're looking for B19, B17, literally just those two parts there. And it does also show that you know, about painting. Paint exterior colours at this stage. See back of box for all paint colours, which is, that's when we flip it over and we can see that everything's going to be pretty much all of that. 94, 53. It's got black in here, but I don't even know where the black would go. It's literally just going to be tyres. It does show. So we've got a little gun, and what was that? 17, whatever 17 is, it's a hatch. Oh, it's the little yeah, periscope bit. So that's just those bits, and we'll just neaten that up as before. yeah, using a craft knife to get in definitely means you can get in a bit closer, and the closer you can get in means that there's less to remove. However, you do want to be careful that you don't actually get in so close that you actually remove plastic from the part itself. It's better to file down because you can't really put it back once you take it off. So there we go, we have the little machine gun coming out. Just going to check which way around that goes. Okay, oh, that is actually, that's keyed. By that I mean there's a little notch, there's literally a little, make sure that goes the right way around. And that likewise has got a little little recess where that's going to go. So in there, blob of glue on each. And as I said, blob of glue, literally, this is why I would hate this. As I did that, a big blob of glue come out. And even then, yeah, that was like a bubble of glue actually, that burst. There we go. Now if you do have tweezers, something like tweezers might make this a little bit easier because this is going to be a bit fiddly. Try to get that in place and actually just slide it into position. Get that the right way around. That's fine there. And then this one, which way up did this go? Okay, there, again there's a slightly larger, there's a notch that fits within the notch. So not only do you know it's square, you know it's all going to be going the right way around. And I sort of slid that into place. Right. So effectively that is that done. Now is to go onto the turret. Looking at here, there was also more out of interest, part 18. Not too sure what part 18 was, but it's not getting used. So there are a couple of unused bits, and also we've got some mud flaps, which, oh no, we do get on too, that's fine. No, I've skipped a page. I've literally just gone down there. Yeah. What am I doing? Okay. Losing the plot. We do need these bits. That was 18. And then 2 12s. These, I've got more of those little ejector pin bits. Ooh, okay, oh that's, which just help them get pushed out the mould, so we will need to remove those as well. These are tidy up. Actually, I'm going to use the knife just to trim it a little bit more. Takes off those. I got in, because that was a flat edge, I could get in a bit tighter with that anyway. So now I'm just going to have to take off, I mean these are only small parts, but each one of these had 4 sprue gate connecting points, which seems a little bit overkill. Now, one thing to bear in mind is these parts get covered up. So just to explain, on here we've actually got these are the exhaust pipes, which are going to be the iron colour, the metallic colour, which was the 53, but they then actually get covered up. So they kind of need to be painted separately, but you need to put these on. So what we're going to do is clean these up, let's put these on, but the covers we won't put on yet. Actually, it did make me think that because these do get covered, there's some little rivet detail, and I'm making sure these are all fine. You don't see them because, of course, they get these heat covers on them, so they're hidden away. So I'm putting a bit of effort into doing that, which probably isn't needed doing. These are both the same, so it doesn't make too much difference which one they go on. Now, just to make sure, holes here. So we've got these row of 3, sort of like we've got these columns of 3 holes there. These have to go in the middle, okay, the middle ones, and then the heat covers will go either side. So just to explain, make sure that these go in those, that sort of one that I'm indicating, not those. So we'll pop a little bit of glue on each and they'll go in there. So for this, I'm going to put a blob of glue in the middle of each, and then I say blob, that is quite a blob, and then just spread the blob out. So that should mean, there we go. That's fine. And then you've got this. Goes into, to put a there. How's that going to go? Which way up? Just making sure I get this the right way up. Yeah, that's fine. So again, I'm just going to pop kind of bubbles and stuff. It's almost like snot coming out of a kid's nose, this stuff. Right, so I've got far too much of that on there. I've just smeared it down. Try to get the excess off my fingers before I pick the part up and slide that into place. Okay, you might see it catching the light. We have got excess glue there where it did splurge out. Just see if I can use the back of the scalpel just to try to rub that off. And this is the problem. If we'd been using the Tamiya extra thin, literally, you put that in place, literally just put it in there without any glue, and then you dab the glue onto the join, and it kind of gets sucked into the join. But there we go. The good thing is with a tank, they are a bit rough and ready. So what we'll do is I'll take them off for now, but we won't put them on. So we're going to take these off because we need to paint, and I'm surprised actually it hasn't suggested painting those before this goes on. I mean, it would make it a lot more awkward. So I'm taking these parts off for now. I'm just wondering whether I could, actually, to be honest, no, I'm thinking I would usually be using an airbrush, and the problem with an airbrush is you don't have quite as much control, as in literally with a paintbrush where you touch it is where the paint comes off. With an airbrush you can, it will spray around a bit more, which is fine, but it does mean you need to do a bit more masking. You're not actually because it's not actually having to make physical contact to put the paint on there, you've got a bigger sort of cone that it comes out on. Now, I'm not going to glue these on, but I'm just going to see whether I can clip these. Yeah, so you can see that will just fit over there. So what we'll do is, actually, well, I mean that you can see that how they go over there, but once I've got everything primed, I will then, actually, well, I could do it in a minute actually, because as the prime would be fine, is paint those the metallic colour and then put these on, but saying that, also going to want to paint the insides of these, so it's probably worth just leaving those off for now. Bear with me, that's a lot of faffing around. And just put these final mud guards on the back, which were here. One of the issues with using this is it does actually seem to work, but it's also a bit clumsy. By that I mean, if I was using one of these, it's a lot more finer. You can see my fingers are a lot more closer to whereabouts I'll be rubbing, whereas here they're about an inch away. There's also a bit more, it's a bit more give to it, whereas these, you know, you can see they're a bit more solid. But they're not doing too bad actually. So one mud guard, make sure these are the right way round. You can see that there's the pins, but they kind of have a bit of an overlap, and that overlap's got to be on the outside parts. Oh, actually, you know, I was saying about there was the gap, and they said don't worry about the gap, and I even opened up the gap. To be honest, the gap is actually hidden by there anyway, so that might have even been a little bit of a, I wouldn't say a fault, perhaps a, you know, a little bit of a fault by not actually closing up, but they were more just sort of saying don't worry about it. So again, I'm trying to do this against gravity to stop it splurging out. A little blob of this between parts, actually if anything a little bit lower down as well. Nozzle to paint it over. Push that in place on each side. Right, so from that point of view, I think we are onto the turret. Okay, so obviously with here we've not got the little hooks that go through there. Could I try to scratch build some? Bear with me for a moment on that one, and I'll just work out whether it's going to be worth the hassle of trying to do that. But essentially for now, this part is done. So what we'll do is just leave this whilst we obviously go on to the next bit. So once that's left, leave it to the side, because what I will want to do is just wait for the glue to all dry properly, and then I can give it a bit of a rub over. I can check any bits if there were gaps, which there aren't, but if there were gaps, then I could use that to fill and essentially, you know, make sure that everything is as good as it can be, and that essentially the glue's pretty much dried up, so that things don't sort of get knocked off. They're going to be, the glue's going to go on there, it's going to cement it on and keep them on properly. So that's fine. Oh, other little things just to notice I have just spotted is that, as well as not having the little hooks on there, we haven't also got the provision for the tow ropes that are on the top as well. And apart from that, everything else. Oh, and also tow ropes on the side, on there, nothing on that side, but we've got tow ropes. Now if I recall, those might have been ones where I actually had to open up the hole on there. Probably if I'd looked before sticking the top bit on, there might have even been little dimples to just make drilling through. So obviously what happened is when they were creating this, they obviously kept in mind that they were going to do a simplified version, and knew that some of these extra bits weren't going to be necessary, but you got them moulded on detail. So I am now wondering whether, with the tow ropes, whether I should actually try to make my own version of tow ropes, whether using stretch sprue, something like that. I've also just spotted that hasn't glued. And then that one has. But yeah, we seem to have a bit of play there. But we do have the glue. It might just be that the glue's not dried. Right, okay, that's that bit done. Next, onto sprue B properly for the turret. So we're going to continue our adventures with sprue B, which is the turret and the gun. So again, I'm just going to pretty much remove everything off of here, because over the next few we can work out what everything is. That should be fine. Again, quite chunky sprue gates. You can hear as I'm really having to chop through. Where possible, I'm trying to support. So let's see. So here, actually, this is quite a good piece. Actually, and indicates it's actually firmly on the table itself. So I'm cutting. The best way to put it is I'm trying to actually cut the sprue off the part, not the part off the sprue. Just taking all of these parts off, because with this kit I don't believe there's any optional parts. Every bit of it gets used, I think. I could be wrong. Oh, there's a little something there. Don't lose that, that would be important. And up, final gun barrel. There you go. Now that should be that clear. That's good. Now we'll just run through, trim off the excess. But I've got to make sure there's some little bits sticking out there. That one, those bits aren't meant to be there. They're to help us align her. Just a thought, if you've got this kit and you're watching it, watching this video because of you've got the kit and you're actually going to be making it and you're doing a bit of research and you've never built one of these before, yeah, I'm actually trying to do this in real time, so without too much editing going on, so feel free to sort of maybe build along. If you haven't already, you could also be doing that. build along real time. Of course I might be doing this a bit quicker than you are. If I am going a bit quicker, then feel free, whilst you're just getting used to it, you know, putting it on pause, following along. And if you're doing it quicker than I am, then you might be doing it a bit too quick. You might be, how should we say, I'm not going to say you're cutting corners, but there might be bits where you're maybe rushing through. And one of the main things that you've got to learn with model making is patience. You don't always get it all done, especially when it comes to, I'm wondering what this bit is, but I'd better be careful with it because it's only small. You know, especially when it comes to the painting, as you're going to find out, this is going to take longer to paint than it is to actually build. And when I say that, I mean not just the actual putting the physical paint on, the putting the paint on and then the waiting for it to dry and then putting on more coats of paint. And that's where, to be honest, I'm getting ahead of myself just whilst I'm chatting whilst we do this. But that's where often models can kind of go wrong. People think it's about the building, but it is. But you can almost say an unpainted model is almost like a blank canvas. If you try to rush, you know, if you do a dodgy paint job on it, or try to more rush the paint job, that's when you can have issues. One of the reasons I'm doing this tank first before doing any of the other starter kits is because the paint scheme is pretty much just an all over. We haven't got the camouflage. We don't have to worry about masking things up. We haven't got canopies or windows or anything. There's a bit of detail in there, but it's not loads. So we can be quite it's quite a simple one in that respect. And what we'll do is see how this goes. We might try a few of the other starter kits as well, which are a bit more detailed. And by that I mean, you've got the canopy on an aircraft, but of course you've got the framework, and often what will happen, people will try to paint those and either try to do it freehand and it gets wobbly and you start getting paint where you don't want paint, i.e. you get paint on the window itself, not the frame. Or people have done that once before and then actually just take the easy option by not even bothering to paint it. And to be honest, I don't think that. I'd much prefer to see a model with a bit of paint, maybe something didn't work absolutely perfectly but someone gave it a go, rather than just not even attempting it, because to be honest, then it just looks like a model. At least with, and also something like this, with the tank especially, they get a bit muddy, they get a bit dirty. There's lots of, they weren't made with precision, well they were, but not as much as an aircraft. As in, if you actually go to somewhere like Bovington Tank Museum, and especially the Second World War tanks like this Tiger one, they would all just be, very crude welds, because they're made out of inch thick steel and iron and stuff. So that's all of those little bits done. Let's start. I was going to say let's start gluing. One thing to bear in mind here is we have the no glue icon here, and that is to allow a bit of movement. I don't know if it does it in my one, not tested it. Oh yeah, so you've got a bit of movement up and down there. Okay, so you can, it's posable. To be honest, if it's not, I don't think that's a massive sort of thing, but if you're using maybe this for, if you are using it in sort of wargaming or something like that, it's nice to be able to move things around. So I'm just testing that. So these bits will be glued. And we can see there's actually thing to bear in mind is it's not square, there's not got a back piece there, so it's not got a structural integrity. Little notches there, just make sure those cross over, and then only at the front there, and it's going to be this part here is goes in there. Okay, but just to bear in mind, I've got to make sure that there's a little bit that's it's not completely square. One of the edges is rounded. Just got to make sure that's the right way up, and the rounded edge, so if that's upside down, that's that way, that goes there, and that's going to allow that movement. Okay, so that will go in like so. Just make sure that fits. Yeah, so that will go in like so. But before we do that, I'm going to take that out. Now we know that that fits okay, and just pop a little bit of glue where these bits come together. I'm only going to do one side. No point putting it on both sides, because otherwise there's more chance of it splurging out. So it's literally just this edge here. I'm going to pop it on the inside like we did there, just to get the main blob of it out. Oh, that's far too much on there. I'm just going to see if I can just smear off some of the excess. Pop the rear part together. Make sure that's the right way up. And then put this part, come on, we had it just now. Get that almost together. And we're off to the races. Right, again, try not to get it all over my fingers, and smear that off whilst I can. If you do get it on your fingers, the glue, because it splurges out somewhere, try and get it off your fingers as quick as you can, because otherwise if you start moving bits, you then end up getting your fingerprints. I'm just bending that bit out of the way, because although that rotates, just to make sure if it was pushed up against there and it actually touches, the glue could kind of seep through. Actually, I did have got a little bit of shine on there where some of the glue did go on there. That's fine, and that's actually going to be the bottom of it anyway. So yeah, there we are. We are fine. We're good to go. That's there, and then I was going to say that was upside down. It's not. That is actually that part. Oh, I didn't clean that. Just notice there's some little lighter parts on there. There we go. And now this should, there's two holes there, that goes into there. So again, I'm doing it on the inside part. And try to just put a thin bead around, and then take off the excess. As we put too much on here, what can happen when this goes on, again, before I pick the part up, I don't want to have the gluey fingers. You don't want glue splurging out there and then making contact with the edges. There we go. Otherwise it could start gluing itself accidentally together, and it actually shows you what it looks like once you've completed it. And the next part goes on, so we pop this on first, the top, and then this bottom bit will then fit on. So we do this top bit first, and you can see we've got a little rim that can go around on there. So I'm just going to put the glue, a bit of a blob of it. There's a little gap in there, so that's a good place just to put a little blob. Okay, and here's another interesting bit. Before I put it on, I should have spotted this before, but on the inside there, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this now, there's two, there we go, two little holes there, and here you've got a run. You can see they're a bit more obvious there, a run of there. Now what we would do is, on this version, what it was, you can see we've got spare bits of track that are attached there, so we would have drilled those holes out to put that extra bit of track on. And this version, obviously simplified, so just like I said, some of those extra bits that would have gone on there, if I'd looked inside, yeah, we would have had holes for it to go. So no glue on that front bit there, literally just around the sides and that back part there. And now this is going to slot onto there, but we haven't got, there's a ridge here, so again run the bead on that internal part. It's surprising how little glue you do actually need, but that's going to go there. Now on here, I'm now just going to run the glue just on the edge where it actually connects to the wall of the turret. So I've got glue on that part there, the glue there, slide that in. Now I don't want to slide it, well I say slide it, I don't want to do it too much because otherwise we're going to start smearing glue around. We have got a little bit of coming out. So just use my finger to wipe that, get my thumb in there. There we go. Right, so that's that bit done. We've got a few details to start putting on. So yeah, just a couple of these little bits, the gun there and a few little hatches there. Let's start with a larger one first. That will go, oh, I don't know if you can see it, there's a, get caught the light there. It seemed to have a blob of glue that got in there accidentally. Fortunately, that is a part which is actually going to be having this on there, but if that hadn't been, that would be quite annoying. So put that hatch in place there with the hinge at the bottom. Another bit on top, hatch on the top, so I'm just going to pop a little blob of glue on the top. I'll say a little blob, far too much. I'll just use that just to dab off excess. And right, that, yeah, that just sits on there. So that just gives it a, you can see the little rivets bit, a little bit of raised detail on there, which is nice. We've got a hatch which is already moulded in, and here's going to be a bit of a tricky bit, is this little part is going to go on. What's going to be the best way to do this? Actually, for this, I'm going to take a cocktail stick and put blob, you can see how it all sort of bubbles. A blob of glue in each of those little recesses. Even then, that's far too much. So just try to take off some of that excess and pop that in there. There we go. So that just gives that an extra little, you can see there's a little, that little vent cover or something. There we go. The gun barrel needs to go on. So we'll just test that. So again, too much blobbed out. Perhaps using the cocktail stick on a regular basis would have been a good idea. But the good thing is that goes together quite nicely, so that definitely gives us a bit more, you know, you've got an actual hole in there as well as on the side, so that gives it a bit more. If you were to have had that as a solid lump of plastic, or if you didn't have to put that bit on there, it would have been easier to do. Now, one thing to bear in mind is in here there is a notch. It's a sort of notch that goes one way round, and here it looks like that's got to be on the side furthest away from me when I push that in. Now I just rotate that a bit. Why is that not going in? Okay, so this is interesting, because this is going in, but it's not going all the way in. That little keyed bit isn't going, finding a slot for it to fit into. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go rogue on this. I'm going to trim off that little key. Now, I'm going to bear in mind before I do this, I'm just going to check which way round the bits are to the side. Okay, the holes are to the side. So I'm going to trim that off, because this is to make sure that your barrel goes on straight. So lucky I tested this before we do it. So let's try that again without that little part, and now that sits in there nicely. And that's so pop a bit of glue on the end. Now I'm doing it on the far end because I know when I put this in, as it goes in that barrel, it's going to kind of smear up. Okay, so I'm not putting it right up to whereabouts it's going to come out, otherwise we'd have too much. Pop that in and then give that a little twist, rotate, and there we go. Make sure that is straight. And now that's that bit done. So what will happen, according to the instructions, is that this will now drop in there at an angle, rotate around, and you can see we've now got ourselves, without wheels, we've got a Tiger one with moving. So that is all posable. I'm just going to pop that round, take that off again, and let that dry. We're going to want to paint that, and then got those bits there. Final part now, just for the build process, is to do the tracks, and these tracks are a lot simpler than the tracks that track system that were on this version. I don't know whether this version is still available, because that one, it was all each wheel was individually cut and done, and the track wrapped around, and it was a bit of a nightmare. These are a lot quicker, so let's just remove them. Those. Now these ones seem to have a lot more attachment points, and there we go. We'll take those other bits off in just a moment. Go, done. So that's all those sprues now emptied. Let's take these bits off. Now all those bits were on the edges, not on the bits where it actually comes together. So these should come together like so. Like, yeah. So it should, there still seems to be. Okay, they almost click, they will need glue, but they're not completely click. But there are some little guiding bits there. Let's first of all try to get that smooth. I think it's just some of those attachment points. So first of all, just making sure we get a smooth edge there. And then all those attachment points. Fix that one. There's a little bit sticking up there, so I can't use that trick that I did just now, just doing it. And once this is glued together, I'll probably want to come back and do it again. This one we know was going to be flat. So this is the roughest side. And the edges. So I was going to say these nail blocks are cheap as well. So let's just test fit each of these. So that comes together quite nicely. And likewise that. So they did need a bit of a rub down. I just take off a few little sticky up bits that are on the insides. So let's try this. So I'm going to run a main bead around there, and I think there was also an attachment point. There's a little hole there. So I'll pop a little bit in that hole just on that pin there. Those holes are whereabouts it's actually going to attach the axles. There's a little bit in there, and I think that hole there and that bit there just make sure that it goes on straight. And we're just going to want to run a little bead around. So I'm not squeezing at the moment. Just every now and again I put a little bit of pressure on the rear of the tube. And as it starts coming out I move it, but then I stop squeezing. So I'm actually, if anything, I'm just smearing around blobs. Okay. And now, because we've just filed that down, that comes together and we've got quite a neat, there's no obvious gaps, and because we put a thin bead of it round, there's no obvious blobs of glue coming out. So just give that a nice squeeze, and that's actually quite a solid chunk. We'll do that again. So I'm just doing it on the one bit. So that little location hole there, and that pin's going to go in there, and then again, and again what I'm also doing is I'm sort of putting the glue on the inner part of it. So when it splurges, the excess will be splurged into the part, not out. If that makes sense. Basically, if there's going to be excess glue coming out, or a big blob of it come out there, let's just try to remove that. And actually, although I'm wiping off with my finger, I'm kind of going down at a 45-degree angle, so I'm not doing it flat, I'm pushing it so excess gets pushed in away from the visible edge. Okay, and again, little locating that pin there goes in that little hole there. That comes together there. There we go, into the hole and squeeze. There we go. Pop that on there. So effectively, apart from needing to put the covers on for the exhaust covers, which we'll do once we've got the painted the exhausts, we'll prime it all, put those on. Turret will go on, and we should have a moving turret with a moving barrel. Have I just knocked in my enthusiasm? I think that wasn't on straight. No, it is straight, that's just my eyes. And these, if I recall from before, are effectively a push fit. So those the axles that come out there, and those, I'm just going to put them on roughly. I'm not actually pushing these in, I'm not, because I think they can't, if I recall, they kind of had a click to it before. I don't think they do, but yeah, there we go. Okay, so essentially we are now actually I could just, because these kind of did rest on, so it's all intents and purposes, if these two little exhaust covers had a little dab of glue on there, we can now say we have now built the Airfix 1/72 scale Tiger one. And yeah, we're missing details, so if we compare it to this one, so yeah, it's exactly the same. Actually, I say it's not exactly the same. So we haven't got tow ropes on the side, we'd have to have drilled out the little holes, so we haven't got the tow ropes on the side or on the top. And what else were we missing? Yeah, we're missing spare bits of track on the sides, which are kind of used as sort of like makeshift armour as well, but the rest of it looks the same. Okay, so I think, yeah, we've missed that. Oh, and the eyelets for for tow ropes would go. Got little holes for it, so it's obviously the same mouldings, but just didn't include those bits. But the biggest difference is the wheels, and yeah, this is all done in one go, whereas each wheel was put on separately, painted separately, and with a track built around it. There was like, that was one length, then that was done in sort of separate bits, a length across the top. So I think each side probably had a half dozen sort of parts to it. It wasn't each individual bit of track. So we haven't got as much detail on there with that, so that's going to be a bit more trickier to paint. But the good thing is, this one was a 3-tone. This is just going to be just the plain colour.